most people just sort of take trips and maintain a home base and kind of go from one place to another. And Caz and Craig decided to make it their mission to continue to travel even after they got married and even after they had kids. Hey everybody, welcome to the Abroaders Travel Podcast, your weekly meetup with thousands of entrepreneurs, hustlers, creators, nomads, ninjas, wanderers, and world changers, all seeking to build the skills and connections to live a life without borders. If you want to learn more about what we do or download our entire podcast archive, check out the website, abroaders.com. Happy Wednesday morning, and welcome to another episode of the Abroaders Podcast. I'm Eric. And checking in solo this week, I am in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam, and I'm really excited for today's episode. By the way, this is number 99, so we are one away from the centennial episode. Super excited about that. I think we're going to have something pretty cool for the 100th episode coming up next week as well. Today's show, though, I have an interview on tap with a travel blogger, and one of the most interesting stories. I really enjoyed this interview. I talked with Caz Makepeace of whytravelblog.com. Caz and her husband Craig have built a really incredible resource. I truly love the website. It's a really great travel resource, and they've had a lot of success. They've been able to generate a lot of relationships with other travel blogs. They've been featured regularly on Lonely Planet and in Nat Geo. The site gets hundreds of thousands of monthly visits, and just a true testament to what you can accomplish when you're committed to an idea of sharing your story and sharing useful information that'll help other people increase their quality of travel. So I really enjoyed this. On the show, we're going to talk a bit about making travel into a lifestyle. Caz was traveling since 1997, and it was just a really interesting thing to me because most people just sort of take trips and maintain a home base and kind of go from one place to another. And Caz and Craig decided to make it their mission to continue to travel even after they got married and even after they had kids. And so I think this was a really cool interview just to kind of show the other side of what's possible. This is definitely not for everyone. I'm totally not advocating, and neither is she, by the way, that everybody should drop what they're doing and live a nomadic lifestyle. But if it is something that you're curious about, I think this really kind of paints a picture of how that can be possible. And I just love how quickly she brushes away those conceptions of, okay, sure, you can travel when you're young and single, but not when you're married, or, even furthermore, you can't travel when you've got kids. That's crazy, or at least you can't do it as sort of a nomadic lifestyle. And so I thought this was a really cool interview. Caz also shares some cool secrets and information about how she was sort of able to transform her blog into one of the top travel blogs on the web and build a huge audience and a full-time income. We talked specifically about some of the tips that you might be able to use if you're an aspiring blogger to be able to reach out and get your content featured on other blogs, especially bigger blogs that probably get a lot of those requests. And honestly, I really don't think it's as hard as you might think. She shares some really interesting advice on how to connect with other authors and how to do it in a way that you sort of build up that equity over time. You're not necessarily going to reach out and tomorrow they're going to say, sure, come post on my blog. But I thought what she shared was a really actionable way to approach it. And after we finished recording the interview, I definitely took her up on her advice and asked if Abroaders could do a post on the Why Travel blog as well. So hopefully we'll be getting something featured on the site relatively soon and help some folks be able to use points for travel, because that's one of the areas they don't have any content. Anyway, so before we get into the interview, which is going to be at abroaders.com/why travel with the letter Y rather than the word, so why travel. I wanted to share a couple of updates from Abroaders global headquarters, currently here in Vietnam and also with AJ in Detroit. Number one, we are still taking applications for internship and for our CTO position. So abroaders.com/CTO and abroaders.com/ apprenticeship. Two totally different positions. There's some more information about it at those pages. We are definitely very actively recruiting the new apprentices, and the reason I wanted to bring this up is we have just gotten an amazing turnout from the first group that we hired. This week we had 3 new blog posts come live, including a breakdown of the best credit cards for Delta customers and why you may or may not want to go with a Delta co-branded card over a membership rewards earning card, especially if you're like AJ and I and you live in a Delta market like Detroit or Atlanta. This is a really good post for you to check out. Also, 2 really cool posts about leveraging credit cards for global travel and for domestic travel. We've got a post on how to get a round the world trip with just 2 credit cards. It's totally possible, and I thought that this was a really, really well-written article. And the second one is about the Southwest Companion Pass and how you can actually get the Companion Pass, what you need to watch out for, and what you need to do to make sure that you get it to last as long as possible. In other words, you can have it for 2 years, buy one, get one free. Again, awesome article. So special thanks to Brock and Anna for putting out some amazing content. Both of them have been doing an incredible job so far, and we're really, really happy to be able to share that knowledge with all of you guys. So please check out those posts, and if you're interested in working with us, head over to abroaders.com/apprenticeship. Again, all of these links are going to be in this week's show notes, abroaders.com/whytravelblog. All right, so let's get into the interview. I started out by asking Caz to just tell us a little bit about her story and specifically sort of the evolution of her travel, how she started out and how she ended up making travel a part of a nomadic lifestyle. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the interview. Tell me a little bit about your experience traveling. Can you just kind of introduce yourself and tell me a little bit about what got you inspired to create a travel resource?
Yeah, so I've been traveling for nearly 20 years now. And I first started in 97. I was in university. I was studying to be a primary school teacher. And my brother had gone over to the UK, and he was working there and telling me all about his incredible stories, traveling around Europe and having this amazing time. And so I decided that that was going to be me, and graduated from university, and 3 days after that jumped on a flight and took off. And I started a 3-month backpacking trip through Indonesia with 2 girlfriends, and then from there moved over to London myself and lived there for just over 2 years on a working holiday visa, and travelled around Europe and did Southeast Asia, and I've pretty much been travelling ever since. And in 2002 my husband and I, we married, and 3 days after we were married we took off overseas and did the same thing, a working holiday for 5 years. So we had what we like to tell people was a 5-year honeymoon.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was really cool. And then after that, we had our first daughter, and everyone was, telling us the travel was all over for us now. And for me, it was like, I'm having a child. I'm not walking into a prison sentence, and I was determined to prove them wrong. And so we've got 2 children now, and they've been traveling with us since they were born.
That's amazing. That's honestly one of the things that was most inspiring to me, and just like something I was immediately interested in when you reached out to me and I looked at the blog, because I think that's something that's really common for people to think, to have that kind of preconceived idea that sure, you're single, you can travel, but probably not when you get married, or maybe when it's just you and your husband or your wife, you can travel, but not when you have kids. And that's really amazing that you guys have made that work. Tell me about how did your travel life change when you had the kids? That must have been a little bit scary.
Yeah, I guess I didn't see it as scary. I just think because I had lived so many years traveling that it was just my normal way of being. But it definitely changes. There's no doubt about it. I mean, there's certain things you can no longer do. Like Craig and I, we used to love going for really long and strenuous hikes. So obviously there's a limit to how far you can hike when you have kids. We still go hiking with them, but we can't go as far or as high as what we used to.
Sure.
Of course, we're not out partying until 2 or 3 a.m. like we used to pre-kids. And the way you travel a lot slower. You have to think more about them and having a little bit more structure. And, we would be famous for kind of just crashing in our car and finding the cheapest way to sleep. But now with our kids, obviously, we're looking at more apartments and things where they feel a little bit more comfortable.
Sure.
So it changes in that aspect. But, it's just something you roll with and you just adapt. And it's easy to do, and then you can continue to travel and have these amazing experiences with your kids.
Absolutely. And I imagine, that's something that to me is really important, when I have kids, that I want my kids to have that experience. I mean, I've been incredibly fortunate to have been able to travel since I, finished up school, and I've probably been at it, 4 or 5 years, really, spending a lot of my time on the move. But to do that, to have that experience from such a young age has got to just really create a lot more perspective and be a really valuable asset for your kids.
Yeah, it's just amazing to see how they've grown and changed. I mean, when they were born, we weren't doing sort of long-term nomadic travel. We were doing more short-term travel, and but not long ago, a few months ago, we finished an 18-month road trip around Australia. So we were constantly moving on the road for that period of time. And I mean, it was just incredible to see how our daughters grew from that, and the confidence they gained and the experiences they had. It just, nothing can compare to what it can do for a child and how it can open up their world. It's just an amazing gift to give them.
So tell me a little bit about your approach to education. I had another episode that I interviewed a family that was traveling. I think they had four little ones that they were cruising around with, and the stories that they told me about sort of how opportunities just kind of came up, and like really interesting questions that kids would ask. I'm curious, especially with your experience as a teacher. How was that for you to be able to be, the one that was guiding your kids' education as you were cruising throughout the world?
Oh, look, it's amazing. And I always, it was my belief as a teacher, and it is now, that parents are the first and foremost educators of their children. So it's something that guiding is something we should be doing from when they're born. But to be able to be there for them every minute of the day, that can get a bit tiring at times, but to be there and watch how they interact with the world, and to be in that moment as they're experiencing the world, and guide them with questions, and to gain their understanding on how they're perceiving the world is really quite enlightening, and it makes you feel like you're experiencing travel for the first time again as well, because especially I've traveled for so many years, you can be quite deadened by it. It can become so normal, but just going down the beach and scrambling over the rocks becomes a new adventure when you're with kids.
For sure. I don't want to put you on the spot too much, but do you have any experiences or any stories you can share about just things that kind of reminded you that, wow, this is a totally different experience from a kid's perspective?
There's so many. I think one thing was the wildlife, coming into contact with the wildlife, and especially around Australia, and seeing them for the first time they saw like a kangaroo, because it's so kind of common for us kangaroos. I've grown up with them all the time, but just to watch their faces and to watch them and get close, and there's times I could feed kangaroos or cuddle them, and I just really grew to really love kangaroos again myself. And even though on our road trip around Australia we saw hundreds and hundreds of them, every time we saw them, we all got really excited together as a family. It was like, wow, look, there's another kangaroo.
Yeah.
And it was like we never got sick of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think part of that was because the kids were there and they just had this joy around and this excitement about always seeing kangaroos.
Yeah, one of the last things that we did in Chiang Mai is we went to this elephant nature park, which is a really incredible preserve that they have a lot of elephants that they've rescued from sort of abusive situations, tourist operations that are overworking them, and so we went to this place and we're just kind of experiencing. It was just sort of like a day in the park with a bunch of elephants, and you get to walk around and touch them and feed them. And there was this little girl that was maybe 6 years old. And she was just in absolute delight the whole day, and I was excited about seeing the elephants, but she was in our group, and she was just laughing and running around and just having the best time ever, and totally no fear, like even the adults are kind of like, wow, these things are huge, and obviously everybody was watching out for her, but just that, just complete abandon and just happiness of being there was super inspiring, and that's got to be a daily thing when you've got little ones.
Oh yeah, and it's that joy that they do have that we lose contact with the older we get, I suppose, and they just get you back in touch with that. And so it's amazing to be around little kids for that reason. They bring you back to that joy and that awe and wonder.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about. I want to ask some questions about your site because you guys have been. I saw on one of the pages, I think it was the About Us, that you've been doing this since like 1997. That was way before being a digital nomad was cool. Tell me about the process of sort of finding a way to continue to build this site and how, I would imagine it's developed into a source of income in a way that you guys can continue to travel while you create something. Tell me about how the site came about and how you worked to grow it in such an awesome resource.
Yeah, sure. We started the site in 2010, so we'd been traveling since 97, and the way that we traveled before we started our blog was working holiday. So we would live in another country and work there. So I was a teacher, my husband was a carpenter, so we could pick up work pretty easy in different countries. And we did that by getting working holiday visas. And then, we hit 30 and those options dried up for us, but we really wanted to continue to travel, and so we had to then find a way to create our own portable business. That was the only sort of solution that we came up with. So we tried numerous different things and chased all these get-rich quick schemes and internet dodgy stuff, and none of that work. And we went through a really bad period where we had some investment properties and that all crashed and went pear-shaped for us. And so in the process of this happening, a lot of soul searching was going on, and I sort of thought, well, what is it that I really love? Maybe if I bring it back to that, things might change. And so I came back to travel. Travel's the only thing that's ever really worked for me in my life. It's the thing that where I feel most fulfilled and connected. And so I had an idea to create or to write a travel ebook, because we'd had 10 years of working around the world and traveling. So I had a lot of stories and tips. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to write this really useful ebook, and I thought, well, I need a community of people who want to buy it. So I started searching online and came across travel blogs, and I saw what they were writing, and I was like, wow, they're writing the stories that I've been living for the past 10 years. So I decided to jump in and start. And that was pretty much how it started. And because we had been traveling for so many years and had so many stories, as soon as we started our travel blog, we had a lot of content that we could write and a lot of really useful content. Mm-hmm. And I think that was really quite key for us, because our success happened quite quickly. And I think that was one of the biggest factors there, was because we already had that established authority, I guess, so to speak. and I did a lot of guest posting, and we were really big on social media, and so the community just started to grow, and so it's evolved to where it is now.
That's super cool. And I think, I mean, just looking at your site, I mean, it's a lot of content, and obviously you've been doing it for a long time, and the writing is really good. I mean, I truly, like, anytime I get an opportunity to talk with someone for the podcast or just connect, I really am super passionate about travel, and so I always, try and spend some time reading through, and it's impressive. I mean, it takes a lot of work to sit down and write, article after article. I mean, you guys are posting pretty much every day, sometimes more than one a day. Has it been like that since you started?
Yeah, it has. It's always been pretty intense, and I think that was our strategy. We just said, let's do this and let's hit it hard. I've never found it a challenge to write content. We've just got so much of it. So I find it quite easy I feel like if I have to post every day because I've just got too much stuff to get out there.
Sure.
Yeah, so it is quite intense, but the only time it sort of eased off when we were doing our road trip around Australia, we could only manage to do about maybe 3 posts a week because we had the intense travelling and the homeschooling and all of that happening. But we have a few contributors now as well, so they're helping to get that consistent content out for us.
That's great. Tell me a little bit about your experience with guest posting. I mean, I know there are a lot of people that have websites and that produce content and are trying to figure out how to get to the next level. And you guys clearly have done that. I mean, this is like a really well visited blog. What did it take to get you to that point where you had so many monthly, so many readers? And do you think it was mostly reaching out to other blogs that helped kind of get that critical mass for your following?
I think it did help a lot. And I say this a lot to people when they're doing guest posts, is that it's not, when you're doing guest posts on other sites, you can't expect all of a sudden from one guest post to get hundreds and hundreds of readers. It won't work like that, but the more that you guest post, the more that you spread your story and your message deep and wide, the more you're building your brand and the more people are starting to kind of see you everywhere, and that builds your credibility, and then soon enough they'll start following you back to your site. And of course that the long term, it pays off in the long term as well, because you are building this authority, and then of course Google's going to appreciate you more and start showing your posts more in Google. So we see that now, several years later, the effect of doing all that guest posting has really helped with our search traffic as well to come through.
Yeah, and it's truly the right way. It's the way that Google wants you to do it, and the way that readers want you to do it too. If you're creating quality content value for people on other sites, that's something that I want to get better at. We haven't really been too aggressive about reaching out because there's just so much, there's always so much stuff to do. But I think it's incredible, and it's also fun because you get to meet some cool people by doing it.
Yeah, it's good. I love it. And I'm just starting to go through, like, I didn't do the guest posting for some time because we were traveling and I just couldn't cope with it. But I'm just starting again to dive back into that, and having posts published on many different sites and doing podcast interviews. And so there are easier ways. Like I find interviews are a great way, an easy way to get your work published on other sites, whether it's via a podcast or even a written interview that a lot of people will do because they're looking for people to feature on their site and create easy content for themselves. And interviews are really easy to answer because all you're doing is just sharing your thoughts and your story and your message. So it's very quick and easy to get out there. So that's a really powerful, easy way that I recommend people jump in and start doing it.
That's great. Now, obviously, it helps, certainly once you get to a certain point where you have some of that authority and you've been featured on other sites, it's maybe easier to get your foot in the door, so to speak, with a big site that you want to post. Do you have any specific strategies that you used that maybe at the beginning, before you were well known, that helped you sort of get a break and get an opportunity to feature your content on a blog with a lot more traffic than you had at the time?
Yeah, I would start attempting to build a relationship with the blog that I was interested in getting published on. So I would, be on their site, reading their content, commenting, getting a really good feel for the type of content that was put out and perhaps what it was that I could offer in return, and connecting with them on social media. Twitter's an amazing platform to connect with, other bloggers or influencers or whatever it might be. I mean, we've first reached out via Twitter to Lonely Planet, had conversations with them via Twitter, and now we've done various different things with Lonely Planet, and they're always sort of sharing our posts, etc. So social media makes it really easy for people to reach out and start connecting with them, and then once they know who you are, it's easier to have a post published. I went to lots of different conferences and meetups, and just started meeting people in the real world as well, which was great. A friend of mine that I have developed a relationship with through blogging, I contacted her the other day, and on her site she doesn't accept guest posts anymore, but I reached out and said, hey, I've got this post, would you be interested in? She said, of course, I'll take a guest post from you. So that kind of relationship building is really vital, because it can really open up a lot more doors for you. I think that's great advice. One other thing that I saw you had written about on your site was to try and find the people that are doing what you want to do, or the people that have sort of achieved what you want to achieve, and try and model them and reach out to them. Was there anybody in particular that sort of, when you were getting started, you were looking up to and helped guide your path? I can't really think back to when I started. I think it all feels kind of like a blur. I was just going through the motions of trying to build something and make it work. But there's a lot of people that I sort of learn from. And I guess in the travel blogging space, at the time that I jumped in, there wasn't a lot out there. There was Nomadic Matt. I did reach out to Nomadic Matt, and I had a post published on his site. But there wasn't a lot of others that I kind of learnt from. But I've done a lot of various trainings and courses. Marie Forleo's B School, I'm not sure if you've heard of that, but that was really quite big for me in changing our blog essentially from a blog to a business, and just structuring it more in a business way and understanding how to approach it with that mindset. So that was really huge for me to do her course. I haven't had any personal correspondence with her, however, but her course was really very instrumental for me. I'm currently doing a few stuff with Ramit Sethi, and Ramit Sethi is massive, he's huge, and you would think someone like that is unreachable, that you couldn't have contact with them. But I sent him an email and said, hey, I really love your course, I'm learning this, so far from what you've taught me, I've implemented this and this, and these are the results I've had. And he wrote back to me and he said, this is awesome, thanks for sharing. And it was like, wow, that's incredible that you've actually replied to me. And that happens quite a lot with people who are really influential and sort of seen as up there. I've kind of reached out to them by email and have had conversations back and forth.
I think that's a really, really cool insight. And it's interesting because, so many of those people that are in those positions talk about that. And you almost wonder how many people really do reach out, or how many of them, follow up a second time. You're not always necessarily going to hear back. But if you just keep sharing where you're at and trying to deliver some value or let them know how their content inspired you. I know I saw a post by Ramit on exactly that, that he basically said, hey, don't write me a 4-page email asking me to do all this stuff for you. But if you tell me, something specific about what I created that put value, created value in your life, that interests me. I want to hear about that, and I'm going to be more likely to respond. So I think that's a really powerful strategy that people can take away.
Yeah, it's incredible. I've had I don't know if you know Jonathan Fields. I've had email correspondence with him because we were listening to a lot of his podcasts when we were traveling around Australia, and I just shared that with him, and we've had a lot of conversations, and then he ended up saying, hey, I'd love to interview you for my new book that I'm writing. It's about how to live a good life. Would you be interested? And I was like, wow, absolutely. And so he ended up calling me and interviewed me to be featured in his new book. I think it's coming out next year. So, and that's just from me writing an email to him and saying, hey, love what you do. I've really learned a lot from your podcasts.
That's awesome. So tell everybody where they can find your content. And I guess if you have anything sort of special as like a starting point, if they want to visit Why Travel Blog and sort of get a feel for the content you have, where can they find you and how can they reach out to you?
Yeah, sure. There's the site, whytravelblog.com. We have a Start Here page, so you can jump on there and we've got some really useful and helpful posts on that Start Here page to help you. You can connect with us by email. We've got a free audio 5-step method from turning your travel dreaming into reality. So you'll get that when you connect via email. And then on our social channels, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, we're at Why Travel Blog, and that's the letter Y.
Awesome. Well, hey, thank you so much for sharing your story and being here with us today. It was really a pleasure.
My pleasure, Eric. Thank you for having me. It's been great chatting with you.
Yeah, you too. Hey, so is it okay if I usually just like do the interview rolling and then I'll do like an introduction at the beginning? Is there anything in particular you want me to share in the intro part? Is it okay if I share a little bit? I saw on your press page, like some of your stats on like how many readers. Mm-hmm. Is it okay with you if I share some of that info?
Yeah, sure. No worries at all. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. So do you guys have mostly Australian readers? Do you have people from all over? What's the demographic like for your blog?
It's actually mostly American.
Really?
Yeah. But our Australian readership really exploded when we went around Australia. They obviously got heard about what we were doing and were interested, and we were on TV a couple of times in Australia and in a few newspapers and stuff. So that really helped our Australian readership, but mostly US. Amazing. We've got a really large Pinterest following, and so Pinterest is US people use Pinterest more than any other country, so that's what we see comes across. A lot of them from Pinterest come over to our blog.
Awesome. Well, so yeah. I don't know if you checked out what our site. Have you listened to our podcast at all, or gone through our
No, I haven't, but I was looking at your site. So you do a lot about the frequent the hacking, travel flight hacking.
Yeah, so we right now we're working on building an app. We want to build a platform around it, but at the moment we have sort of a done for you service where we help walk people through the process of getting cards and sort of picking the right points. And so the podcast we just do every week, and we kind of share what's going on with the frequent flyer programs, the different airlines, the different banks, and kind of what the opportunities are. And so a lot of people are kind of following us to sort of stay on top of that. And then we help people like get through the actual nitty gritty of like which cards you should apply for and sort of what you can do to get yourself a free flight. Would you be open to like a post that kind of talks about? I notice you've got like a cool section on the sort of saving on airfare, but that doesn't really have anything. Have you intentionally stayed away from that at all, or?
No, it's just we don't have those options in Australia.
Sure.
We'd love to be able to do the flight hacking like you seem to be able to do in the US.
So bad for everybody outside. We do have some international folks, and we get all kinds of like, please, can you, like, is there anything for us? And it's like, at some point we definitely can create it, but there's definitely not as much out there.
No, I know. I mean, we can we get a lot of free flights and that from our frequent flyer points, but nothing like what you guys can do.
Yeah, you guys have to earn it the hard way. I mean, if you're flying all over and you get a whole family, you definitely get some free ones eventually. But well, I'd love to create something if you would be open to that. To kind of walk people through the process and at least turn them on to that it's out there. I'm sure a lot of people in the U.S. already kind of know roughly what's happening, but I'll kind of read through. Do you have any sort of any like guidelines or anything published that I should check out before I work on something?
Yeah, I'll send them. My husband's done up that. I'll send you the doc. The email I've been corresponding through with you, is that the right email to send it to? Because I didn't know if that was the system, because that was coming through.
Our support email, and the better one would be to just Eric, ERIK, @Abroaders, and I can shoot you an email from there right now too. So
okay. Cool. No worries, and I'll send you through the guidelines.
That would be awesome. Cool.
Yeah, no, that'd be cool. No, we'd love a post like that. It'd be great. Very useful.
Well, so we're going to be, we've got 2 shows lined up, so this one should come out the first week of December, I would think. So I'll get it out to our editing folks, and man, I really appreciate it. I'm super glad you reached out. We're always looking for people that are living the life that lots of our listeners and readers are trying to create, and I think this is definitely very inspiring and a cool conversation, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, great. No worries. Thanks. It's been great chatting with you.
All right, everybody. That's it for this week's show. Thank you so much again for being with us. And also, thanks to everybody who supported us on our Cyber Monday sale. We had an offer for the Udemy course and had a lot of you guys sign up. So really looking forward to helping you down the path to earning and redeeming your frequent flyer miles for lots of free travel. Support really means a lot to us. We really appreciate those of you that decided to buy the course. And we definitely thank you for that. It makes it possible for us to keep putting a bunch of free content and resources out there every week. This week's International Jam is a Brazilian reggae classic. The artist is Edson Gomez, and the track is Árvore, which means tree. Guy needs some water, I need some food, need some Vietnamese spring rolls. I will be back to see you guys next week, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard. Wherever you are, travel safe. Hey Brothers, don't be shy. Hop over to the website and join our email list for exclusive travel hacking content. If you like what we're up to, the best way you can support the show is by leaving us a 5-star review on iTunes. Lastly, we would love to hear from you, so send your show feedback to Eric or AJ at abroaders.com. We will see you next week.